The Edison storage battery. The Edison plant, Orange, New Jersey. A series of 12 non-technical letters on the Edison storage battery by Miller Reese Hutchinson, Chief Engineer to and personal representative of Thomas Alva Edison, 1912. Edison Storage Battery Company, 152 Lakeside Avenue, Orange, New Jersey. Copyright 1912 by the Edison Storage Battery Company. Form 1015-1-14-13-10 Mike. Contents. Commercial vehicles, Edison storage battery equipment. Forward. We are constantly in receipt of letters from businessmen and non-technical people requesting literature on the subject of the Edison storage battery. While the Edison storage battery is the acme of simplicity in theory and construction, a technical description embraces terms and phrases which are confusing to the layman. About March 1st, 1912, we inaugurated a series of letters appearing in the Journal of Commerce of New York on Friday of each week and in the Journal of Commerce of New York on Friday of each week, and written by Mr. Miller Reese Hutchinson, Chief Engineer to and personal representative of Mr. Edison. We have received such favorable comment on these letters that we have decided to reproduce them in book form. Mr. Edison labored for 7 years and expended over $2 million in the evolution and perfection of the Edison storage battery. The perfected type was placed on the market 3.5 years ago, since which time thousands of cells have been sold and operated in a multitude of different applications. Mr. Edison has personally studied reports on their performance. As a result, he unreservedly endorses and recommends the Edison storage battery for general use, and backs this up by a guarantee of full rated capacity at the end of 4 years of use in connection with approved apparatus, irrespective of the number of charges and discharges of the batteries, and regardless of the total mileage of the vehicle on which they are installed. With an abiding faith in the sound business judgment and fair-mindedness of the public, knowing full well that the opposition he experienced when introducing his incandescent lamp would be repeated, he nevertheless attacked and mastered the problem. The Edison storage battery is as great an advance in world progress as was the Edison incandescent lamp, and will soon come into as general use. We hope the graphic account of the early struggles, gradual development, and final accomplishment of the Edison storage battery as set forth on these pages will prove of sufficient interest to ensure careful reading and filing for reference. Respectfully, the Edison Storage Battery Company. Approved, Thomas Alva Edison. 152 Lakeside Avenue, Orange, New Jersey. Industrial Trucks, Edison Storage Battery Equipment. Letter number 1. The inspiration and perspiration of the Edison Storage Battery. A successful invention is composed of 1 part inspiration and 90 parts perspiration. Edison. Mr. Edison, what originally prompted you to take up the storage battery problem? This question is a natural one. It has been asked many times. Everyone seems curious to know why, at the age of 55, after a life of constant application and phenomenal achievement, he deliberately plunged into the most difficult, tedious field of research and development he could have selected. The majority of successful men at that age are preparing to retire and enjoy some of the emoluments resulting from a busy life. In the majority of cases, it has been a life of drudgery. Few are so fortunate as to be able to select a vocation entirely congenial. For years they have looked forward to this playtime, to which they are justly entitled. Not so with Mr. Edison. He selected his life work when a mere boy. He suffered privation and in some instances hunger in order that he might purchase the coveted wire, glass jars, and chemicals for experiments. For the first 10 years he passed through an experience which would have cooled the ardor of most young men. It was slow, uphill work. Finally there came recognition and subsequent fame and fortune. So when he attacked this storage battery problem, his only incentive was the desire to accomplish another task in a field which had heretofore yielded small returns for the vast amount of time and labor expended therein by others. Years before, when the first storage battery was discovered and the details published, he entered into a comprehensive investigation and conducted many experiments with various combinations of lead and acids. As a result, he was brought to a realization of the limitations of development from such chemical reaction and deferred further effort until such future time as might be found available. That time arrived in 1900. The same question was asked by a prominent scientist in a letter received some months ago. Mr. Edison replied, "Started with the broad idea that the displacing of horse-drawn vehicles in cities would be an enormous advance. That the ideal vehicle is the electric. That the electric never could be made commercial with the lead sulfuric acid battery, which, while based on an unique reaction in chemistry and very beautiful in theory, does not and never can fit in to meet commercial requirements of foolproofness and longevity because of the inherent destructive influences. Believed that nature could afford one more reaction, and I restarted, avoiding every combination requiring acid. After a very long number of experiments, I at last found a reaction which, although initially very weak, was promising. I pursued this for 3 years, finally producing the first type of nickel-iron alkaline battery. 4 more years were spent in working out the mechanical problems, special processes, and machines for manufacture. I feel fully repaid for the time, labor, and money expended. When returning from a business trip to New York in the spring of 1900, Mr. Edison experienced considerable difficulty in reaching the Cortlandt Street ferry by reason of the congestion of traffic near the ferry entrance. It was before the days of the traffic police squad, that arm of the department which has brought order out of chaos. For 2 hours he stood watching this conglomeration of loaded trucks, irate teamsters, and fretting horses. On one of the pages of his notebook he jotted down, problem, narrow streets, comparatively large street area covered by a horse-drawn vehicle, slow speed, limited roads, congestion, resulting delay and expensive therefrom, depreciation excessive. Directly under this he wrote, solution, electrically driven trucks covering 1/2 the street area, having twice the speed with 2 or 3 times the carrying capacity, and sufficiently rugged and practical to be operated by present teamsters. Development necessary. Running gear, easy. Motor drive, easy. Control, simple. Battery, question mark. That interrogation point is responsible for the 7 years of unremitting toil and expenditure of over $2 million before the satisfactory culmination and endorsement of the solution, the Edison storage battery by Thomas Alva Edison. Only one who has worked constantly side by side with Mr. Edison, who has come to him radiant in the belief of having solved a difficult problem, only to see his handiwork shattered by some crucial test which only an Edison can devise, really appreciates what it means for him to finally approve a complete structure. I recall an occurrence of interest. A group of machines for stirring material immersed in a liquid did not operate satisfactorily in one of the Edison factories in Orange, and the entire output of the plant was being curtailed. We had purchased the best apparatus on the market to accomplish the result, but without success. Several had attempted to remedy the defect to no avail. As a last resort, Mr. Edison was appealed to. Instant and continued action was necessary. I was his assistant on that job. By the time the 50th model was constructed, tried, and found wanting, I had about made up my mind that nobody on earth ever has known anything about stirring liquids. When the 75th model was tried with like success, I was sure of the fact. Every available man in the laboratory was busy making up models from the copper plate sketches, which appeared with remarkable frequency and originality from Mr. Edison's pad. He sat in the chemical room, a cigar between his teeth, the floor literally covered by sheets of rejected sketches he had prepared. For 10 days and nights the work proceeded uninterruptedly. When opportunity offered, we took up little cat naps, with the bench or floor as a bed and a coat as a pillow. Finally, an obviously excellent design appeared, was constructed, tested, and found perfect. It transpired that this had been the third sketch he had made, but, as he expressed it afterwards, it looked too easy. I am always afraid of anything that looks too easy until I have tried everything else. This was a siege of only 10 days and nights. Imagine 7 years of it. Nights, days, Sundays, and holidays. And so I repeat, unless you know this man intimately, you cannot appreciate how very excellent the Edison storage battery must be for him to have finally endorsed it. I really think he is sorry he has finished this battery task, because it was a foe worthy of his steel. From first to last, aside from the special manufacturing machinery he designed and tested, over 50,000 separate and distinct experiments were made, the results of each being carefully tabulated and resolved into curves. If all of these curve sheets were placed in the end, the line would be 16 miles long. When the average person receives an assortment of suit or dress goods from the tailor or department store, the usual procedure is to attach the card designating the quality of the goods, price, etc. As a result, when desiring to order, it is impossible to combine the card and sample as when received. This is just about a parallel with the performance of the ordinary man after he has purchased a storage battery. He puts it out of commission first and reads printed directions after. Because of this, Mr. Edison had as his ideal the production of a battery that can be short-circuited, charged backwards, overcharged, discharged to zero and left standing indefinitely without injury. A battery that would be light, durable, and stand up under violent concussion and vibration. He achieved it. It was not my mission to feature Mr. Edison. He does not need it. Furthermore, it is distasteful to him, but I thought a little explanation would give you a clearer insight into the character of these letters. They are not formal advertisements in the real sense of the word, because they are letters addressed to you to familiarize you with the Edison battery in details, with its theory, construction, and many applications. Furthermore, I am an engineer and not a compiler of stereotyped advertising forms. I know Mr. Edison intimately. Am thoroughly familiar with his battery. You are interested in learning of both, or you would not be reading this letter. So I'm going to try to tell you the story as I would want to be told if unfamiliar with the subject. I will also endeavor to avoid technical language as far as possible, and to present the subject in such manner as will be able, I will also endeavor to avoid technical language as far as possible, and to present the subject in such manner as will enable the non-technical man to comprehend. The transportation of merchandise through city streets has developed into a problem of enormous magnitude within recent years, owing to the rapidly increasing congestion of traffic. 15 years ago, a horse-drawn truck could make twice the number of deliveries to steamship docks and railway freight terminals as it can today. Meanwhile, the cost of maintaining such a truck has increased. At the time our streets were laid out, At the time our streets were laid out, they were more than adequate in width for the existing traffic. The buildings were small and there was plenty of room for everyone. As the population increased, however, the old structures have been replaced by huge skyscrapers, each a small city in itself. But the streets have remained as they were. We have elevated and underground railroads to relieve the congestion of passenger traffic. But what has been done to relieve the congestion of freight traffic? Absolutely nothing. Inasmuch as it is practically impossible to widen the streets, the first solution of the problem lies in the use of such vehicles of transportation as will move the load more rapidly. Also, a vehicle which, while carrying 2 or 3 times the weight of merchandise that can be handled by a horse-drawn truck, will take up but half the room on the streets. Such a vehicle must be so simple to operate and so rugged in construction as to enable the present truck drivers to handle it. The answer to this problem is the electric truck, equipped with a battery that will stand rough treatment and downright abuse. If Mr. Edison had attacked this problem 10 years sooner than he did, traffic conditions would not be so unsatisfactory as they are at present time. Every merchant in every large city should be interested not only in the acquisition of such trucks himself, but in persuading other merchants to do the same, for the reason that it will relieve the congestion and enable his own trucks to make better headway. The only thing that has stood in the way of the solution of this problem has been the battery. This condition no longer obtains. I will endeavor to prove this assertion to you in subsequent letters. So that's the beginning and the first chapter, the foreword in, I guess, letter 1. So we covered foreword and letter 1, inspiration and perspiration, and we'll go on from there in subsequent videos. Just want to mention though, Edison here noticed that there was a congestion problem that parallels with Elon Musk noticing a congestion problem. Elon Musk has decided to do the boring company and making tunnels under the earth to help relieve congestion. He's also done his electric truck initiative. As I speak here, they're going to have a battery day where they're allegedly going to unveil the million-mile battery. So you see a lot of parallels here between Elon Musk and Thomas Edison. Relieving congestion, realizing that where did it go here? That the ideal vehicle is the electric. So you see a lot of parallels between Elon Musk and Thomas Edison. In fact, identical conclusions, and almost identical approaches. So that's something to think about. Now, in the next part of my next video, we'll go over letter number 2. And we'll talk about all this stuff here. So this is Military Industrial Museum. Make sure you subscribe. And I don't care if you like it or not. It doesn't really do anything. This is pretty much a work of my interest, because I've had this channel when I got back from Iraq. I started it, and my interests are not they're not very popular. So this channel is never going to be profitable and anything like that. So I'm pretty much giving up on that. But if you want the updates, you should probably subscribe, and then hopefully you'll get updated when I upload another chapter, and like that. Alright, so anyway,